So when you're doing mods for Fireworks Mania, it is often a good idea to have your project and your mod files in something called Github. It's a way to both back up your changes or your mods and the files that the mod consists of, but it's also a good way to be able to go back if something breaks, and also to be able to work multiple people on the same project, even though you have to be careful because you can override stuff and have issues and stuff like that. But let me make this video super simple, and it's basically not so much about how to work with Git/GitHub when modding, but more about how to create a repository, how to clone it and set it up, and how to get a project from both onto GitHub and from GitHub to your computer. This might sound completely complicated, but let's do it step by step. And let's start out by how to create a GitHub repository. So first thing you do is that you go to github.com. And as I said, why do you want to do this? To keep a backup, kind of a backup of your project, but it's actually mainly to be able to commit the different changes as you go, so you can go back if something breaks, but you'll see in a moment. Anyway, so you go to github.com, you create an account, and then you get into something that looks like this, something like this. And then you go up here and create a new repository. And a repository is basically a project. Let me make this a little bigger so we can see what we're doing. It's basically a project. So we could call it GitHub Fireworks Mania GitHub test, which I couldn't spell. Boom, something like that. And it says that it's available. I can use this because it needs to be unique. So that's fine. You can do a description. That's up to you. Choose visibility. I would recommend you do it private. You can also have a public repository that everybody can see, but in most cases you want to have it private, so only you and whoever you invite can actually work on this project. Then you can add a README file. That's optional too, but it's we can do it here so we can see how it looks. And you can also add a git ignore file. Again, we're not going to super many details, but basically the the git ignore file tells this Git system which kind of files you wanna not put into this repository. And what kind of files could that be? Well, some files in Unity and in other programming IDEs and stuff like that, there's a lot of files that are generated runtime. There is stuff that is downloaded and stuff that is built and stuff like that, that is not something you want to save because what is generated on a build or at runtime, you don't want to have that into a repository like this, because then you have to overwrite all the time and it makes no sense. So we add a default GitHub file for Unity. So if you search for Unity, you can see here, there is a default file for Unity. Again, you don't have to think about it, just put in Unity here. License, up to you. I'm not gonna put anything in here. So you create a repository here. And now you have a project on GitHub here. You can see right now it consists of two files, a README, which is the one shown down here. And we can do a change to that. We can say, hello world. And then we can commit these changes. We can do a comment, commit comment, and then we can go back to project again. And now it says hello world here. So you can write stuff here if you want to have a public mod, for instance. You can write what it's about and how people can participate and help and stuff like that. But we're not gonna go into too much of that right now. So now I have an empty quote unquote repository here in GitHub, which is basically a container where I can put stuff in. But before I can do anything with it, really, I need to have this repository synced or cloned to my local machine here. And the way you can do that in many ways, but the simplest way is to get something called GitHub Desktop. So if you search for GitHub Desktop, you will get into this site or something similar, and you just download that, install it, log in with your GitHub account, and then you end up with something that looks like this once you have logged in. And because you are logged into this application with the same credentials as you're logged into GitHub, they are kind of connected, and you can search on your different repositories, which we will do here. So in here, now I have a lot of repositories already, but what you do is you click up here, or I think you can also do it here, clone repository. So now you find the repository that you want to clone, and we called it something like, what is it, GitHub something? Yeah, Fireworks Mania GitHub test. Boom. You would of course give it a name that kind of describes your, mod project. And down here you decide where to put it, and I put it into my D projects, GitHub, and then the name of the repository. So that's fine in my case. So I just click clone, and this will then clone the project. So now in here, if we remove this one, so now we are on the local machine, and we can also open up my, not this one, but this one, which is my D drive, projects, GitHub, and in here there should be a Fireworks Mania GitHub test, you can see here. So in here we can see the same readme and git ignore, which we also have here. So these are the same files, and I can make changes to them here also. And just to show you how it works, how GitHub works, if we open up this hello world, we can say from my local machine, and then I save that. So now I did a change to this readme file here, and if I open up the GitHub desktop application, you can see now that there are one change, and you can see the change here. You can see this line will be deleted and this line will be added, so it will end up looking like this. And then we can do a comment. We can put in why we changed this, for showing how Git works, and then you do like this, and then you commit it. So now we have no pending changes anymore, but we have a history where we can see we did an initial commit, we updated the readme file. That was what we did on here on the website, and then we did this local one, and you can see there's an error here which indicates that this commit here, this set of changes, which is only one file in this case, but it could be multiple files, have not yet been pushed up to GitHub here. So maybe it's easier if we do it like this, so we kind of have local to the right and up on GitHub on the left. So now I can click this button up here in the corner, push to origin, and now it will push this change and this error will disappear. And now if I refresh this page over here, you will see that it now says from my local machine, and it's been updated. So this is what I have locally, and I work with files locally. I commit changes to the local repository, and then I push that to GitHub. And by doing that, we can have other people, which I will show you later, that can clone this project on their local machine and then get the same changes as you committed. And this is the way you can work together. But anyway, now we have created this little project and we have cloned it. So now we have a location here on my local machine where this repository is cloned to. So now I'm gonna create a Unity project in this folder. And this is very important. You always need to clone the repository first, and then you put your files into it. You don't create a project locally and then clone on top of that. That can cause some weird issues. So always clone to a new folder. And if you have a project already, then afterwards copy that project into this location here. But anyway, let's open up a new project here. We just take this version, which is the one, take to the mod tools here. And if we go to the change log in the Fireworks Mania mod tools, we can see that it needs 6.047, and we need to have the built-in, where is it? This one, built-in render pipeline. That's very important. That's what we use for now in Fireworks Mania when we're doing projects. So we have an organization here. You're also logged into GitHub. This is another tutorial. I assume you have GitHub installed and you have Unity Hub installed and the Unity editor. And I will just do it my local project. I don't need to connect it to anything here. So I'll just say Fireworks Mania and GitHub test Unity project. And now I'm just calling it this so you can see the difference. And now I pick a location where I need it to go. And it's again D project GitHub. Again, that's up to you, but I have just cloned this repository to this location here. So I'm gonna select that folder and then create the project. So now Unity will create a project in here, and I don't know how to fix this. I'm doing this way every time, because as you can see over here, it now creates a project folder, or a folder where it creates the Unity project inside here. That is fine. You can have it like this. It's no problem. But I usually like to have the root of the Unity project out here in the root of the GitHub project. But again, it's totally fine just having it in here. You can so if you want to have it like this, you can just leave it as is here, or else I will show you whenever it's done in a moment. I will show you how to get it out in the root, and it's actually really simple. We just copy paste the files out here and delete that folder. So it's very easy. Now we just have to wait for Unity to start up. Yes, perfect. Boom. Packages, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and I'm too lazy to edit this video, I guess, so it will just be one long one here. You can just skip ahead. So now you have a project here. Let's close that project, and then we move the content of this folder because we want to have it in the root, or I want to have it in the root at least. So you can just select everything and then cut, and then you can paste it here. Boom. And then you can delete this folder. Boom. So now we have the root of the project here, the Unity project. And then of course over here where we created the project, that doesn't work anymore because, you know, we just deleted the folder that this things is in. I know this is super complicated, but you can also just leave it in there, then it's easier. But I just do it like this normally. So I remove the project and open it from a disk, and then I browse into the GitHub test one, and then we are in this folder here, and we can open up, and now we have this project here, and we can open it again, and everything is fine. So, and here we have the project. Perfect. Okay, so now we have this, we have created a Unity project, and we have put it into the folder that we have cloned our repository to. So that means when we go in here in our desktop, GitHub desktop, you can see there are 21 changed files, and this little plus indicates that it's an added file. So these are all the added files that is required for this Unity project to work. And as I talked about in the beginning, there is this git ignore file, and that excludes something like logs and library folders, and that's why you don't see it in here, because you are not interested in having these folders and files in the repository because they are generated by Unity anyway. Sorry, just my son had to say something. Again, I don't want to edit this. It's fine, I guess. Anyway, library logs are excluded, and that's why they're not showing up in here on purpose. So we can say initial empty Unity project, and then we commit that and push that. So now over here, in a moment when it's done, we will see not there, in here. Maybe it's a little too big. Looks weird. So now when it's done, we can see a lot of folders and files in here, and this is basically our Unity project. So that's all good. So now we are ready. We could open up the project. We could install the Fireworks Mania mod tools, and then start working on the project. And again, every time we have made some changes that we think are fine, we can commit it and push it to the repository, and then we have kind of a backup, you could say. So let me go back to the agenda here. So we created a Unity GitHub repository. We've done that. We cloned it to a local machine. So we have it down here, yeah. And we created a new mod, not mod project yet. We just created a Unity project, but we could add the mod tools, and then we had a mod project. And then we commit that to the repository. So that's fine. So, and also I explained how Git works in general. Like, you know, you saw I changed a file, committed that, pushed it. And it's a little more complicated than that. I'm not going to go too much into that because this is mainly to explain how to set it up in relation to GitHub and clone it and stuff like that. So now we do the last one, which is how to clone an existing repository to a local machine and open in Unity. So let's assume that you either have another computer where you want to continue working on this computer, on this project, or you got a new computer, or you refreshed, or you lost your local version of the project, or you need to work with another person on a project, so therefore you need to have this project on your local machine too. So to kind of fake that scenario, let me delete this, where is it? GitHub. I cannot delete it when I'm on it, so let me switch to this one. And let's see if I can. This one, can I delete that? Yeah, remove. Boom. We just do like that. So now I'm just trying to revert back, so you know I don't have this project locally anymore. And we go to Unity and we delete it here. Again, this is just for me to get to a point where I don't have this GitHub test project on my machine. So now we are actually like we were on another computer, or we are a different person that needs to collaborate on this project. So we have nothing of this up here locally. And as you can see here, there is a full Unity project here. So how do we get that down? Well, you actually already saw it kind of, but now I'm gonna explain it anyway. So you have this project here and you need to have access to it with your account, else you can't find it in here. So once you have access with your account, if you're not the owner of it, you can the owner can invite you as a collaborator. I don't want to do that now, but you can add a collaborator, and then that person can also get a version of this project down on his machine, or can see it here on GitHub. If it's a public one, everybody can of course get a version of it down on their machine. So the first thing you do is you need to clone it. So we go up to Files, Clone Repository, and then we search for, it was GitHub something, GitHub test. So we find it here, and let's just clone it to another folder. Let's clone it to we just call it V2. So I clone it to another folder than before, so we can see the difference. So this is basically just setting it up, making a connection between this repository here on GitHub and the local folder called Fireworks Mania GitHub Test V2. So here we have all the files, and now we want to open this project in GitHub. And as I showed before, actually, you open up the the Unity hub, and then you add project from disk, and then you browse to that folder, the V2. And in this case, because it's in the root, I need to open this one, else I have to navigate to that folder containing the assets, packages, and project settings folders. That is where the project is, and that's what you need to open. There can be many more folders, of course, but this is the folder you have to open it as a Unity project, the one with the assets and packages in. So I open that one, and now I have it in here in my Unity hub, and now I can click it here, and it should open, and it will take some time again, just as I created it, because what it's doing right now is actually generating these library and this library folder where it do a lot of, as you can see, it generates a lot of files here, and there's no way to put that into GitHub because Unity would generate it by itself anyway. So we can save some traffic and some files we don't have a version control of. So now the project is open. Perfect. We can open up the symbol scene, and I can maybe, because now I'm gonna help with this project, so I'm gonna add the cube. So in here, this project is now much better. I can save the sample scene, and I can go to this one, and you can see these 3 files have been changed. Some of these files you have no idea what's going on inside, or you most likely don't. Like the sample scene here, you can see some changes here. That is basically what Unity changed, both in order to add the cube, but also by setting it up. And it also made some changes to some other settings file for Unity, which is for now fine. So we just say added super cube to sample scene. Oops. Again, we're just playing around here, pretending to be working together with another person, or just working with yourself. Again, the entire game, which is only me working on it, is also in GitHub here, so I can go back and revert changes that I don't want to have anyway. If I mess something up, let's say, for instance, let's just see here. Let me go back to this, and we can see commits here. And you can see added supercube to sample scene, and you can see the files that have been changed are these files. So one of the benefits of having this is, let's say I went in here on the sample scene and by mistake did something. I deleted the supercube and the main camera, and it was like, oh, what did I do? It's not working now. You know, it looks weird. There's no supercube. What do I do? Then you can go again here, and you can see these files have been changed. So let's say I'm not happy with these changes because I just made a mistake. So I can revert the individual files by just right-clicking on that file, or I can discard all the changes, which will then revert it back to the last known commit, you know, the last one it knows here from the history, which was the commit where I just added the cube. So when I go back here and say, oh, do you want to refresh? Yes. Often if you do this, it's a good idea to close Unity and open it again. Because sometimes can give errors depending on what you're rolling back. And you can also do it with new files. Let's say I create a new script, mono behavior here. Boom, boom, boom. I create that script, and it added the new script and the meta file, also some settings. And I'm like, oh, I don't need that. It didn't work. You know, I was also assigning it to the cube, this new script. I was removing this, blah, blah, blah. And I can see that this change didn't work. Again, I'm just pretending to do some changes, but you would do some real changes that you think would work. And then you figure out, that wasn't what I was planning on. Let's go back. And then it will go back and it will take everything back again, as I said before. So now there is no new file, and the cube is still there, and you still have the collider box, and the lights are still here and everything. So this is basically how to work with GitHub and basically Git. GitHub is the name of this site here where you host these Git repository, but this actual this actual system you're using, committing and pushing and pulling and all that, is actually a system called Git. So the system you're using is called Git, but you're using that together with GitHub, which is the hub for these Git repositories. But there are many different places you can put your repository. But GitHub is my favorite, and the favorite of a lot of people. So this is basically it. I hope it explains how to do these things. We created a repository in GitHub. We cloned that, which in the beginning was empty, and we cloned that down to a machine. Then we created a new mod project, or a new Unity project. We could say, mod/Unity project. And then we committed that to the repository and pushed that up to GitHub. And then we talked a little about how to work with Git, the Git ignore file, but mainly the working with Git is the part where you roll back or you commit changes and stuff like that. And then the last year, how we clone an existing repository to a local machine and open it in Unity if we need it on another machine, or we got a new machine, or we are another person that needs to be working on this project. So yeah, that's it. That was 24 minutes. Damn. Okay, I will do some chapters, I guess, and then you can just fast forward back and forth to to the parts that you find interesting. So happy modding. See you in the next one. Bye.